What up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Laud Times podcast. Got a special guest tonight, Mr. Mark McDaniel. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How you been, man?
I'm great. It's good to have you. Obviously, we've engaged a little bit over, the last year or two on social media through my Laud Times on X, formerly known as Twitter. You seem to have kept up with the team from a distance, from what I could tell. And so I want to get you a little bit about your background for you to share with us on this space of who you are, and then obviously how you got into soccer, and then more specifically how you got into following Tigres and Tigres Femenil.
Sure. So first and foremost, my name is Mark McDaniel. If you see me on Twitter, the Bird app, I go by Second City St. Louisan. Referencing that I'm not in St. Louis at the moment, but born and raised in St. Louis, grew up there. Went to school in Missouri, and after school moved to Illinois, moved to the Chicagoland area. And for me, soccer has been a journey that's now been about 10 years. When I went to the University of Missouri, I did some college radio work, and during the summer, World Cup was on. 2014, Brazil was on. And I remember watching, it was the U.S., I believe it was U.S. v. Ghana, and it was John Brooks' header that sealed the game. And just seeing the crowd just absolutely wow out, for more or less a more harmonious term, just kind of got me hooked from there. It was just the passion, the cheering, the noise that just came through the speakers on the ESPN feed. And don't get me wrong, right? I've seen, World Series titles when you're from St. Louis. Baseball is a religion. I remember watching, those games, all-star games. I've been for massive football games for Mizzou when the Rams were still in St. Louis. But there was just something about that broadcast and that reaction after that goal that kind of just got me hooked. And then from there, I just started following leagues. For me, the easiest thing was catch a team and kind of just like roll with them as they proceed through the leagues and the system. The first team was Everton. My buddy said, "Hey, get into the Premier League." I was like, "Okay, I'll get into Everton." Then I got into a few other teams in Italy and Germany. And it's fast forward a bit to 2017. I started, I heard a little bit about Liga MX and like the teams that were there. And for me, the team that I handled on was Tigres, because the University of Missouri, their mascot is the Tigers.
I love that story.
Especially, with the background for Tigres coming from a university and their mascot being the Tigers. It was just a natural fit from there. And I've been trying to catch games as much as possible. It's been a little bit difficult here stateside with the previous deal, especially we would not get many games. Sometimes they'd be on Fox Deportes. But the deals they had, unless they were playing like, say, Santos or Juarez or something like that, you really wouldn't get many games for Tigres, or unless you went to like the dodgy Russian streams. And look, man, I grew up in the days of LimeWire. I put my computer through enough. Growing up. I'm not about that life anymore. So, getting into it by watching clips on Twitter, clips on Facebook, and then me in the community. So, like your podcast, Tigres English, really getting to hear the perspective from, fans who's been a part of the team for a long time, especially in English, was a very helpful way of me being able to stay connected to the team and to learn more about the team and learn more about, just the community in general. There's a really rich history, a really rich story to how Tigres connects to the greater community over in Nuevo Leon. And I just kind of been part of the ride ever since.
Bro, I love every single thing that you just said out loud. Let's take it back to, your college life. Obviously, Missouri, like you mentioned, the mascot Tiger. 2017 is when you start watching Tigres. What were some of the first things that you started watching for Tigres? Because around that time, we were still a very powerful team in terms of carrying over from where the dynasty began in 2015.
Yeah, I got in right in Apertura for 2017, so right when you got the 6 star, and being able to see kind of like, I remember when Gignac first moved over from Ligue 1 over to Liga MX, and part of me at that time back in 2015 was like, that's interesting, because that usually doesn't happen with European stars, especially in like the prime that Gignac was in. will be coming over to Liga MX. UCB MLS, this retirement league allegations, things of that sort. But being able to see him just really gel into the team and embrace the city, embrace the culture, and it led to that 6-star, and it was kind of had me stuck from there.
That's awesome. So the 6-star was against Rayados, our city rival, and so fast forward, you catch 2019 championship and 2023 championship with also the CONCACAF World Cup club appearance. What are your thoughts about Tigres as you're getting into the team itself, and you obviously know about Gignac, and then that growth that you watch from 2017 to now 2023?
I think that it's just continued to get bigger and bigger. And there was a discussion, I think, that your podcast had a few months ago that was talking about how in Mexico, Tigres isn't seen as one of the grandes, right? They're not seen as one of the traditional big houses. They're not an historical powerhouse, say, like Cruz Azul. Even though Tigres has history, it's not like Cruz Azul, it's not like America, it's not like Chivas, things of that sort. And for me, just as an American, and more specifically an American from like the Midwest, so nowhere near Nuevo Leon, nowhere near, say, where a lot of expats from that region go to in Texas, I really didn't care, more or less, is that like Tigres was a big team. They had big players, they had big names. Guys like Gignac, guys like Enner Valencia, who came from Everton, right? Like those were the guys that I were following. They had the success, like we were talking about in 2017, 2019, the Club World Cup. The game against Bayern Munich. Like from my perspective, they were a big team. So it was really interesting to hear that discussion saying that, people in Mexico don't really see Tigres as a big club, because from my perspective, the growth that they've had on the men's side, we're not even going to talk about the femenile side where you talk we'll get into a discussion maybe later on about where they're at now, but like they are the cream of the crop in Liga MX Femenil. So for me, it was never a thing about, what a big team or small team. They are a big team, and they've continuously grown for at least as long as I've been watching them.
Yeah, it was on my podcast that we talked about that, and I remember specifically you quoted us, with our takes on that episode, and I said specifically that our fan base is not really interested in becoming like the 5th best club or big club in Mexico. We're interested in the beyond that, and that is like everything that's been going on during this beginning of the Leagues Cup and the Summer Cup, where Tigres Femenil participated in Houston, right? The Tigres weekend. I think that for us, you are a prime example of what we are proud, at least more so on the English community side. I'm sure the audience in general, fan base, is also proud to, would hear your story. But I think for us in the English community who have followed the team, in both languages, and, now that we've taken a major interest in like following the team a lot more in English, it's a really cool story to hear your story that, how you became acclimated with the team, everything that you just expressed yourself as far as like the team building a brand and building its success and being a big club from your perspective as an American from the Midwest. So I can't express the pride that I have just listening to you talk greatness about Tigres and everything that they've accomplished. What do you think in general? What does Tigres need to do? Because obviously, we've followed a lot of, from the bad years, and you talk about the history, that we have. Moving forward, though, and where we're at now, where the club is in terms of now expanding into United States with, a lot more, rights to Fox Deportes now here in the States. They're going to be the house for Spanish broadcast. So you can still catch them there. Now there's Estrella TV, which is through an app, so you can catch the games there. Maybe even help you with a little bit of Spanish here and there, because you're going to be, more around it. And then, there's talks that, there might be another network who could broadcast them just specifically in English. Where do you think that the club needs to head moving forward with all that all that, chatter around it?
I think first and foremost is maintaining stability. It's one of the key cornerstones of American sports is that teams may move, they may go about, but once you're in, like, stability is like at its core, right? So maintaining that stability as an organization so you can go ahead and increase that growth. I think the Fox Deportes deal is a good first step. moving forward. I mean, from an English side, you can get them on, say, FS1, FS2, Fox Soccer Plus. So if you have, like, say, like Sling or YouTube TV or one of the major streamers, like, you should be able to get a considerably more Tigres games than, a few years ago, where, if you're an English speaker, you had to wait to see when they were playing, say, like Santos, or when they were playing Juarez, who had those deals already with Fox Deportes. I was disappointed. There was some rumors, I believe, that they was going to go to Amazon, or there was an Apple deal coming down the line. And I'm a little spoiled by MLS Season Pass. I'm not going to lie. The quality is there. It's nice to see them on Leagues Cup. And I was really hoping that, Tigres games could move to there, or in the future, if Liga MX decide to sell broadcast rights as a single league. It's one of those really interesting things about Liga MX that I don't think I see in, like, anywhere else. The teams individually sell their rights instead of, like, the league in general. So I really was hoping for something a little bit bigger, but moving to Fox Deportes, where you have a few more channels to see the games, you said FS1, FS2, Fox Soccer Plus, that's helpful. It's a good first step. And then from there, aside from broadcasting, just outreach. Tigre this week in Houston, mass success. I mean, some of the pictures that we were seeing, on social media, Twitter, Facebook, the whole 9 yards, you saw just, seas of yellow, seas of blue, kids was out there, having fun. Families were out there speaking English and Spanish outside of the stadiums. And that's just a really good thing. And hopefully with that, they, decide to come to other cities. It was nice to see them go out to Vancouver as part of Leagues Cup, even though it's not a lot of Tigres fans in Vancouver. But at the same time, I would love for them to come up to Chicago, have a game down in St. Louis, something like that. Like, come to where everyone else is at. Because I think that's a really good way to not just kind of corner yourself in a niche and was like, yes, you are a big team, maybe say in Texas, Austin, Houston, maybe Dallas a little bit, but come on up to Mississippi. We want to see you in the Midwest too.
What do you think that, from your perspective, since you started watching Liga MX, outside of the pitch success that they've had with the signings and, the championship runs that they've gone on, do you, what's your opinion on versus in comparison to the other Liga MX clubs? Because obviously a team like Guadalajara or America, whose popularity, because there are a lot, older teams, they've been around close to 100 years or over 100 years, I should say. And a team like Tigres comes along the way, mid-60s, years around. And what do you think about their presence and the growth that they've had, like I said, outside of the pitch? Because, on the pitch, we've seen it, Gignac has done a ton for the brand. But outside of the pitch, in comparison to the other big clubs in Mexico, what do you think about what Tigres has accomplished?
I think for their age and, where they've been at, they're in a really good place. You can look at, your big historic clubs, right? Your Chivas, your Americas, your Cruz Azules, your Pumas, things of that sort, right? And a lot of their fans have come up to the States, and they brought their history, they brought their culture, to different cities. I remember, being in St. Louis, there were a lot of kids that had Cruz Azul jerseys in the neighborhood that I was nearby. Or when Club America played St. Louis City in Leagues Cup last year, the stadium was like half yellow. And if you've ever seen a game at, St. Louis City, City Park, that don't happen. So for those clubs that have that history, that have those families that brought their fandom over, when they immigrated to the United States, it's great. But Tigres is younger; they don't have that advantage of all that history. But from having Gignac, by having success, going all the way back to when they was in the Copa Libertadores to the Club World Cup, like, we're watching that stateside. We see those games. We see those teams. We see those players. So we don't think about it in a, say, historical sense, even though, America is much older. Chivas is much older. Tigres is the team that has had that success. And the more success that they continue to have, and the more that continues to get broadcast stateside, you're going to see more and more fans, all across the country gravitate towards them. And the Americans like winners. And Tigres has won a lot in recent years.
Yeah, I've always said that it's just easier to get on board when your team has success. And I like that because, with everything that the team has accomplished, And, I'm more interested in the conversations that are happening, on this side. Not that, the conversations in Mexico don't matter, but, the game's a lot more globalized than it ever was before, with all the access we have to all these streaming apps where we can watch any league all over the world. And when you hear the name, specifically in the English language, and you hear like comments from Apple TV broadcasters to Fox Sports to anybody that just, ESPN, talk about a powerhouse of a possession machine that Tigres is, and just, compliments all around. It's really cool that they don't buy into that old narrative that's going on in Mexico, that it's like you're not part of the big clubs. When, now the partnership with Leagues Cup, a lot of people in Mexico criticize it. And for us, specifically at Tigres, I think it's a huge opportunity, because you are on a path to gather more audience or more fans by, more success. And the Leagues Cup provides that, because the MLS soccer fan already knows of Tigres, but the more, the guy that doesn't go to all the games, doesn't keep up with all the social media, but just likes soccer or attending matches, it's easier to, like, oh, I saw that team and I saw their fans. Man, their fans were like so much into the game. They couldn't stop chanting. It's just easier. So I think that Tigres is doing that very successfully. And hearing it from you, it validates that. So props to our club for doing that. And I hope that continues. But let's talk a little bit about the Leagues Cup, since I've touched upon the topic. You're in St. Louis, or not in St. Louis, you're in Chicago area, but St. Louis is, the team that you support. Talk to me about that. Obviously, you're from there, or you were there, and then how you became, a co-founder of a supporters group for the team.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, if you go back into I'll take a little bit back to a little bit of history with it. So St. Louis has always been a soccer town. It's been a baseball town. Everyone knows the Cardinals. Like, you see the STL hat, it's the Cardinals, right? Like, that's their most noted brand. Been around since 1892, right?
They took care of us, the Astros, a good amount of times.
Look, I don't think that Homer Bradley just landed yet, but we won't talk about that. You got your rings, a couple trash can bangs, but you got your rings, so it's all good. So, like, the Cardinals have been around since like 1892, right? One of the oldest teams in Major League Baseball. 10 years before that was like the first noted soccer game in St. Louis. It was one of the oldest hotbeds for American soccer, alongside with places in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Like, there was some marketing that said it was America's first soccer capital. Now, some fans weren't fans of all that, but when you go back into the history, St. Louis has that. From the amount of amount of academies that have come out of St. Louis, amount of U.S. Men's and women's national team players come out. Josh Sargent, Tim Ream, Becky Sauerbrunn, all of them are from the St. Louis area. So St. Louis has always been a soccer town in a soccer region. The only issue was there wasn't a professional team for players to be in. There was one back in, say, like 70s and 80s in the old NASL, but that team moved to Anaheim. There's a history of St. Louis teams moving to California. We won't get into that so far. But like, there wasn't a professional team. If you want professional soccer in St. Louis, you were either going west to Kansas City or you was going north to Chicago. So in 2019, St. Louis City comes about, and it becomes just this incubator for soccer, but also just the region in general. It really leaned in on this local pride with the flags, the arch, the colors, all that sort. And it just kind of became this gathering point for people from all parts of the city and the surrounding suburbs. And for me, that's something that I take very much seriously when it comes to sports fandom. Like, yes, win your titles. That's awesome. But anybody can win championships. I want to see how, your team connects to your city. If not, you're just a brand. That's kind of boring to me. That's why the Cardinals are such a successful team, because it's not just, it's a baseball team in red. Like, no, you see St. Louis in them, from the Budweiser Clydesdales and all the tradition that goes back to that. To even a hockey team, the Blues, is based off an old song when the Saints go marching in. The St. Louis Blues is the name that came off. But anyways, right? So tying into that local scene and those people that make the city, that make the region what it is what St. Louis City leaned into, and I wanted part of that. I'm born and raised in the city of St. Louis, and I said that I want to get a little bit more further and bringing more people that's in the city to support the team and feel like, hey, I can get behind all the smoke and the flags and the dancing that creates an atmosphere that you may not see at a baseball game, might not see at a hockey game. So me and my friend Mo, who's out in the St. Louis suburbs, we decided to make this group called Black Stars. Black Stars MCV, and it's a Black supporters group for St. Louis City. Our goal is to connect people from all across the region with Black history and Black culture in and around the city of St. Louis and tie that into supporting soccer and through St. Louis City. And it's just been a really great experience in tying in with some of our friends from other supporters groups, the big group, St. Luligans, our Latino speaking group, Santos, the Punks, and a whole bunch of other groups that are really just coming together to showcase what this, this random city in the Midwest is all about. Let's be real. Like, not a lot of people know about St. Louis, aside from, say, like the Cardinals or such like that nowadays, right? Go back into the history. Yeah, it was a big city back then, but not so much now. And being able to work, within Black Stars and work with our friends and other supporters groups, it's been really great to just kind of showcase who St. Louis is.
That's great, man. Congratulations on that. That's amazing, and I love that you tie everything around the history of the city. Obviously you being from there, your ethnicity and your race, everything. So I love that. What has been the biggest challenge in starting this supporters group, and obviously with the brand new, it hasn't been 5 years since your team has been in the MLS. So the challenge, that you guys took upon starting this group, and then where you guys are at now?
I think the biggest challenge is just getting people around the area to know who we are, right? The club got announced back in 2019, and they built up the stadium. Stadium got finished in 2022. But there's been, as I mentioned, there's been a gap in professional soccer in and around St. Louis. We had the St. Louis Stars of the NASL that existed in the 60s and 70s. They moved out to Anaheim. That was about 20 plus years ago. So you have a 20 or 30-year gap in which there wasn't really professional soccer. And people know, like I said, people know the Cardinals. They know to go to Busch Stadium for baseball games. They know about the St. Louis Blues to go to Kiel Center to go to hockey games. But we're bringing in a brand new sport, a brand new team in a sport that many have not heard of on a professional level for about 30 years. And how do we stand out? How do we show that we're not, an offshoot of the Cardinals? How we're not an offshoot of the Blues? And working with our friends in the various supporters groups and being in the social media and establishing that community is a really good way of us doing that, and just helping us to outreach and showcase who we are, not just as a supporters group, but also us as a team and also us as a city. So more and more people who are like, oh, well, this is interesting, will be able to come down to the ballpark and want to go ahead and wave some flags, pop some smoke canisters, grab their beverage of choice, and just enjoy the party.
Absolutely. We had Mark visit us from Springfield, Illinois, and I'm just reading this because you mentioned that obviously the stadium, is it called City Park?
Yep.
And so he has a place, I think it's a tap room. It's called Schlafly.
Schlafly.
Schlafly, sorry.
No, you're good.
Schlafly. So he was telling me that's his favorite brewery and his favorite, obviously beverage of choice to drink. And, he even sent me a picture of it when he left here from Houston and he stopped by there for lunch. And he said, obviously whenever, if Tigres gets the chance to, play there in the future, it's a really good spot to stop at.
Dude, absolutely. If you go, so the fans will usually start at Schlafly Taproom because it's right across the street from the ballpark, and they'll do a lap around the ballpark as they march into the supporter section. Before then, there's a huge jam session. All the supporters groups usually just get in the middle of the street. And for people who aren't familiar with soccer, they're walking down, it's Olive Street, the street that it's on, and they're like, who are all these people? Well, this seems fun. I see smoke. I see flags, people dancing. There's food trucks, so you smell the food too. It's a really fun atmosphere, really fun time, and we would love to see fans from all over come downtown and just have a good time, crack open a beer, again, or you have beverage of choice. We're a drinking town, but we're not going to impose upon you. But come out, have a good time, and enjoy some soccer.
Absolutely. Well, talk to me about your outlook. This is the second year of the Leagues Cup now, and it's obviously second time around the St. Louis has participated. What you thought about it from the first edition? Now, rolling into the second edition. St. Louis is in the round of 32. Supposed to play Portland, if I'm not mistaken. And so, tell me your outlook on the Leagues Cup in general. What you thought about the sort of fusion of the Liga MX versus MLS. And then your expectations for St. Louis in it, obviously from last year to this year.
So I think for just the two leagues collaborating, I think is an absolutely smart idea. The Premier League is always going to get a lot of eyeballs because of the money and the talent, right? But as I said earlier, a lot of sports is very local. Yeah, it's cool to be a Liverpool supporter. It's cool to be a Man United supporter. Whoop, whoop, rah, rah. But I was born by the Mississippi, not the Mercy. So, having things that are more local and more homegrown is essential. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a large Latin American, a large Mexican community in and around St. Louis. So, a bunch of Cruz Azul fans, a bunch of America fans. And with Leagues Cup, it gives an opportunity for those who may not be City fans or City fans yet, or City might be a second team, to really lean into, their hometown team, because that's where they grew up supporting, or that's what their pops grew up supporting and their moms grew up supporting. So for me, I went down to the Club America game last year, and it was so much fun to see all the America fans, right across the street from Schlafly. They would party with us, they would dance with us, and they would walk into the stadium. They had their smoke into the stadium. They snuck it in, which credit to them, because you're not really supposed to do that. But again, credit to them. I know the fire marshal was probably not happy seeing them scenes, but again, credit to them. And they really got to just embrace their culture that they brought to St. Louis. And it was really cool. And they got to mingle with, other people in the area, and their kids got to sit here and say, like, hey, this is the team I grew up, and this is the team that you grew up. One of the images that, always stick in my head was there was this guy in America's shirt. He was overlooking the pitch. It was like at halftime, and he had his kid on his shoulders, and we're just talking to him about the game. And I'm like, that's what Leagues Cup can do. It can connect communities to soccer. From people who grew up watching America, who grew up watching Chivas, grew up watching Cruz Azul, grew up watching Tigres, to kids who, have spent their whole life in St. Louis. They're now St. Louis City fans because that's their hometown team. But them and their pops can, or them and their moms, or them and their granddad or grandma can, go to the stadium and enjoy that together. So I think that's what, Leagues Cup has been able to provide for, through the collaboration of MLS and Liga MX. And I think this helps them both get viewership, because again, I can watch the Premier League on a Saturday, but I don't have all the money to fly out to a game at Old Trafford or go out to Anfield. I don't really. Look, man, bills still got to get paid. So being able to have those local teams that I can truly connect with, I can go to, that I can have friends, I can have, parties with in my house or something like that. That's what is an advantage that Liga MX and MLS can have through collaborations such as Leagues Cup, and the same thing with Summer Cup, which I'm really happy about, because you get to see the absolute talent that we have, not just in NWSL, but also Liga MX and McDaniel. But to go back to your next question about, how I feel about what St. Louis is doing, for them, I think for St. Louis, their number one goal is to just move forward as much as possible. They haven't had much success in cup competitions. I mean, granted, it's only been 1 year, right? But when it was in the U.S. Open Cup, they got knocked out in the second round by Chicago Fire. When it was in Leagues Cup last year, they lost to both Columbus Crew and Club America. When they got to the MLS Cup playoffs last year, they got swept out the playoffs by Sporting Kansas City. So I think the goal for them was just to, show that there's some sort of growth and move on to the next level of a tournament. And they've done so in the round of 32, and also just integrate a lot more of the incoming transfers. They've had a few transfers come over from Germany, specifically guys like Civic Toyherd, Marcel Hartl, who just had helped St. Pauli gain promotion to the Bundesliga. Get them accustomed with these extra games, because once this tournament's over, then it's the playoff push for the MLS season, and these guys are going to have to be ready if they don't want to get booted out the first round again.
Who's your highest rated player at the moment on the roster?
Roman Berkey. I think that's Roman Berkey has saved St. Louis's bacon more times than I can count. He saved so much bacon, you think he was running a butchery at this point. St. Louis plays a very big Red Bull type of press first, ask questions later type of style, which is great until the defense leaves an opening and a quick transition and the ball's heading toward the net. And Roman Berkey has saved St. Louis's bacon so many times. So definitely Roman Berkey.
Got it. You obviously also mentioned the Summer Cup for Tigres Femenil. Not as good of a success there as we've had success on the men's side with the Leagues Cup. Thoughts on their general participation and what it means for them moving forward with what you've seen from Tigres Femenil Liga MX?
I wanted more. I so wanted more. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to like the top teams in Liga MX Femenil, like Tigres has been up there for so many years, and the type of talents they have been able to bring in. I mean, Capricario, if I remember correctly, was there for a little bit. I mean, now you have Ovalle, who scored that banger against the U.S. in the Rose Gold Cup a couple months back. Like, there's so much potential with them because they've had the type of talent that has come through. They have the trophies. But in this time, we really need to show that because, yes, you've been successful in Mexico and you are one of the top teams, not just in Liga MX, but I'd say in the world. But you got to show it when you're playing people outside of Mexico. Granted, right, going to Kansas City, playing a KC Carn who will put a 4-piece on your head like they're running a Popeyes, it's not easy. And I mean, we've seen that. Trust me, Tigres Femenil is not the first team to go ahead and just get goals dumped on them in that stadium. That like Kansas City Current is playing absolutely out their mind in WSL. But we want to see you, make more effort. We want to see you make it a game. We want to see you when you're going up against lesser competition, the games in the States, win the game. We really don't want to see you, what feels like to me, playing down to your competition. And some of that just comes down to bad fit. I know that there's been lots of discussion on your podcast about the manager, and I'm keen to agree that change is probably necessary because it just hasn't been a good fit, which is kind of sad because if I remember correctly, when Mila came over from Juarez Femenil, like there was a lot of hype behind her. The hype rocket was to the moon, and she had the resume for it, but bad fit. And really, this is not the time to have that bad fit when you're playing against teams in NWSL, when you're about to get into the brand new Conca champions, when you're about to, this is not the time to have bad fit. So for me, I expect more and I want more from Tigres Femenil because this is the moment where you can really assert yourself as a major player on the world stage.
Yeah, it was. I said it, man. It was a missed opportunity. You hit it right on the nail. Mila Martinez not a good fit, and she's holding our potential that we can get to as far as continuing that growth and ascension that we've had with all the players that we currently have on the roster, and we'll continue to sign in the future because let's be honest, Tigres Femenil has the money to sign players. So we have the current roster now, but they're going to continue to sign major players from all over the world and the Mexican League. And so you missed out on an opportunity to play up to one of the strongest leagues in the world, to a competition who plays a different style of soccer, and you could have implemented a lot of technical skill soccer that we've seen Tigres Femenil do with their possession, but they just the NWSL is a lot more physical.
Yes.
The pace is a lot different, and I don't think that we were strategically prepared for that. And that obviously is up to the head coach and Mila Martinez. So missed opportunity for sure there. What did you think of though? Even there, do you think continue to do the Summer Cup as we have done with the Leagues Cup and continue to have that collaboration?
In one hand, I'd say yes. Because for me, right, any opportunity for Tigres to continue to have those opportunities to broadcast in the U.S., right? Those games are on the CBS networks, right? Mm-hmm. So more Americans are getting, used to Tigres as a brand, as a team, as a club, is always important. But at the same time, if CONCACAF gets their act together, which I know I'm asking a lot for CONCACAF, with the Champions Cup and those games are being broadcast, in really good prime real estate and things of that sort, it may make Summer Cup redundant. It worked this time because of the Olympics, But in future years, if the CONCACAF Champions League does what it needs to do and elevates the teams that get into it, it may be a redundancy.
What do you think it's missing for the Liga MX Femenil to continue to grow?
In terms of the tournament?
Yeah, just in general. Like, obviously they've been around for 6 years, and you've obviously watched a lot of soccer, and you're very knowledgeable on what you're talking about, on the men's side and also the women's side now. What do you think is that missing piece for the league in general? And obviously Tigres is part of that, so for it to grow even more.
I think continued exposure, right? I think one of the disadvantages for the NWSL is it's almost similar to the WNBA, right? There is so much talent in women's football and in women's basketball, but there's not enough teams to cover it stateside. Yes, you have the college game, right? We go back to the women's Final Four or the soccer tournament, and like the talent that we got to see in teams like Florida State or Georgia, or on the women's basketball side, Iowa, LSU, South Carolina, UConn, things of that sort. But once you get to the professional level, there are only so many spots and there's so much talent. And what Tigre, what Liga MX Femenil has to, its advantage is that the teams are relatively nearby and it's in the same time zone. Like, yes, you can get yourself a, spot on a WSL spot in England. Now that's a 6-hour difference. But if I can go ahead and be at a high talent club in Mexico, that's a shorter time gap for me to get my family to watch, right? Or my family to come down and catch the games. Or if there's more collaborative efforts between the NWSL and Liga MX, they're going to come stateside, and my family can go ahead and see me a lot more easier there than flying over to, say, to England. So with the amount of teams that the NWSL has, it creates an opportunity for Liga MX Femenil to say, like, hey, you're not an NWSL squad. We're going to still, raise you up so you are like that top dog on, say, the women, U.S. women's national team or the Mexican national team, things of that sort. It's just more exposure so more people know about it when they're coming out of college, and then for the fans that they know about so they can tune in and they can go ahead and watch. So if the games are, say, on CBS, if they stick with the same broadcast deals as their men's teams and they're becoming more accessible through the Fox networks or things of that sort, or consider Amazon or Apple deal, which I still would like, I think that's going to be like the next phase, just being able to increase that exposure so players know that the league is an option and that fans know that they can go ahead and watch it and they have that option. If, there's no NWSL team that I'm getting by or my favorite player is not in the NWSL, is that I can go ahead and watch, my favorite player that came out of college tear it up down in Mexico.
Yeah, and we had an example with that in Mia Fischel. She tore it up with us and, got us a championship and, went to go sign for Chelsea. Uchenna Kanu also made it down to Tigres. So, and obviously some teams have identified some of the Mexican-American players that have played college. We've seen it with Maria Sanchez, Scarlett Camberos, Anika Rodriguez, Mari Carmen Reyes on Tigres. And so, the list can go on with the Mexican-Americans. But I agree with you. I think the more exposure that they have and, the bigger investment that they put into the league, then you're going to attract a lot more college players, especially if this partnership of, we had the Summer Cup, but, ideally we want the CONCACAF to do its job. Like you mentioned, it's going to attract more college players to say, hey, I'm going to go play at Tigres because Tigres is just like, Gotham FC or, the Kansas City Current and any other big team that could be in the NWSL, but it's down in Mexico. And like you mentioned, the proximity to playing here as opposed to having to travel across the pond and get to a European team, which obviously would be great for the player for their overall, level of success or goals that they have in mind. But ultimately, the league could help with that as well. And exposure definitely would help with all of that. So, man, it's been a good conversation, man. I've been really enjoy this. You made this very easy for me to talk to you. You know what you're talking about, so I appreciate that. Sometimes it's some people are camera shy or don't want to say too much. So I appreciate you taking the time and speaking with me today. And I just want to get last couple of maybe predictions. Where do you think the League's Cup's gonna end? Give me your final prediction. With 32 teams remaining.
Ooh, man. I mean, in terms of a winner, it's tournaments, especially when MLS is sketching it, it's all about chaos. Chaos and disorder is the name of the game with this league. So trying to set a winner is tough. I'd say any Mexican team that's able to survive the travel, and especially if they're playing in like the heat and humidity where it gets brutal in the middle of the country during this time of year, has to be considered a favorite. So I'm going to go ahead and put my money on Tigres to go, but possibly go all the way. Having checked the entire bracket to see if they're on the easier side, and I think they might be.
We are.
So I'm gonna put my money on them, and maybe this is just me, just really getting the hopium going. But you know what? We're gonna put our money on Tigres to get through. Because I mean, if you can get through the sweltering humidity of Houston, and I think you can take on anybody in this country. So
for
money on Tigres, and hopefully they get the title and get that CONCACAF spot just out of the way, so they can focus on the league and not have to worry about can they get in the CONCACAF.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question though, because I didn't even mention him because he coached in the MLS, specifically where you're at, Chicago area. Paunovic. What do you think about Paunovic so far at Tigres and through his past in the MLS?
I think he's done well. I think he's done. I think he's had significant growth, and I think he's done relatively well. And I think that I want to see where it continues to go from here. Right? I don't have anything bad to say. His history speaks for himself. But I want to just see where that growth continues to go.
Yeah, I think we're all confident at the moment because we've gotten positive results, and I think that he's onto something. I think that with what he's doing with the rotations and player management, as far as throwing out different lineups, the key players that he's subbing in and out in terms of wing play, the workload being staggered between Ibanez and Gignac, Cordova and Bruneta. I think he has a good idea of what his roster and squad is, and I think he's working towards putting it all together to working out for us. And I think the Leagues Cup would be a great start to his tenure, and like you mentioned, hopefully we pull it off and get that cup, because we obviously know that the Messi boys won it last year, so we wanted to strip that title from the MLS.
Look, man, Guzman goated. Like that save was absolutely massive, man. The streets are gonna miss him when he is gone. It's me. I'm streets. But I think that he's it's been a steady hand in a kind of tumultuous time for the club with everything that's been going on with Siboldi and the board. And it's a lot of chaos, and it kind of gets to what I was talking about stability is like the number one thing that the club needs right now, so they continue growing and not be burdened by poor mismanagement, because as someone who follows Everton, I know poor mismanagement of a club. So having that steady hand, at least on the pitch, would be crucial to helping the club continue to grow. And I think that, like you said, capturing Leagues Cup will be a great accomplishment, a great way to start off the era, a good way to say, like, hey, we can still do this. We can still go ahead, win trophies. We can get to the CONCACAF. We don't have to worry about anything else. We can just focus on us and continue to grow as we've been doing the last couple of years.
For sure. I'm sorry. You turned on my brain for one more question. You mentioned Nahuel, and we talked obviously about APG. Who do you think has had the bigger impact for Tigres?
See, I listened to y'all show over the weekend, and it is so tough. It's tough because Gignac has been just it's like the powder keg you just refuse to just send this rocket to the moon right since 2015. It's been constant growth since he decided to come over here, and he's fallen in love with the area. He's fallen in love with the city. His family's there. I believe his kids are going to be eligible for the Mexican national team. Like, he is the type of player that you love from Europe to come over to North America, MLS, Liga MX, who just embraces it. It's not just a vacation for him. So the impact that Gignac has had on the team and on the club in general it cannot be understated. But Nahuel, man. It's like that man just truly embodies everything I love about Liga MX. Just passion for the badge, a penchant for a little bit of chaos, a little bit of housery, like just. This man was what? He was like hiding underneath the boards during the Ligia a little bit back. Like, that's just hilarious. Like, that is what you want. Like, when I tell people to watch Liga MX because you're not getting this type of entertainment anywhere else, guys like Nahuel is like, that's not who I'm pointing to. So I love Gignac for what he's done for the club, but I'm going to have to go with Nahuel. I'm going to have to go with Nahuel on this.
Gignac stated it in the new docuseries that the team released.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that here soon that they put some English subtitles, so our audience who does follow the team in English can keep up with it. It's a great docuseries, man, and he mentions this in the series. He says that Nahuel has been the most important person in all the championships for Tigres, and for a guy like him to recognize, and we just have a two-headed monster, man. That it's just we've been so lucky.
We've been lucky
to, yeah, for sure. They both deserve it. Once again, my friend, thank you so much. Thank you for following our content and tuning into our show. I hope to engage more with you moving forward, and hopefully in the near future we can connect in person, and obviously share the passion that we have for the sport, and then obviously Tigres itself. So thank you once again for coming on the show, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.